actually a Holocaust survivor. He lives in Hillsborough, who has written a book and also who lectures. And the reason of the lecturing is because of for us never to forget. Always a good idea to remember atrocities so that they are not committed again. I was looking through, his name is Alter Wiener, and I was looking through Alter Wiener's book to see what can really connect. All of us have heard about the Holocaust and perhaps studied it. And I know when I first started teaching meditation, it was really quite interesting because in the beginning of teaching of compassion, there was inevitably someone who would say, "What about Hitler?" And it happened quite a lot. So that was addressed frequently in the beginning of giving meditation in the United States. Alter Wiener's book is a human story. He is a compassionate person, has maintained his compassion. And the book is about compassion towards himself because he not only suffered a lot in concentration camp, but also a lot in his life. So I wanted to read this because in the news, there's a lot about prejudice, recognized and unrecognized. He says, the best definition for prejudice would be an unfavorable opinion formed beforehand without knowledge. In other words, you are having a hostile attitude towards a racial, religious, or national group that stems from ignorance. Only a person who lacks certain knowledge or information about the targeted group may be tempted to prejudice those of other ethnicities. A fight against prejudice and ignorance is not just worth waging, but it's imperative. The smallest seedling of violence, nurtured by hate, must be torn out by its roots the moment it is spotted. Prejudice is not a character flaw, it's a contagious disease. It poisons the well of humanity. Objective enlightenment will obviate the folly of prejudice. Tolerance is the healing balm for our deeply troubled world. So I read that both in commemoration, also in an acknowledgement of someone who's looked very deeply into his own suffering, into humanity's suffering. Bring it back to the meditation practice, because in the meditation practice is where we, in a way, deconstruct and then see how we construct. And we talked about in the first class from perception, we've talked about hearing, and in the case of prejudice, it's really either seeing someone or some people, hearing something, and making an immediate judgment. In the meditation practice, we start to open that up. How does that happen? What are the components? In the Tibetan Buddhist practice, there is a recognition not only of interdependence, which is really recognized in all Buddhist traditions, that there is cause and effect, and in any given moment there are multiple causes, and it can go into multiple effects. So we're going to go more deeply into opening up our awareness, into cultivating our awareness. The other evening, I was actually watching some of my YouTubes of the Dalai Lama, and he was doing one of the practices that we did last week of the 9 breaths, which many of us have done in our Buddhist practices. And I thought, well, we did this last week, and I want to show you how he did. It was a little bit differently than we did. But it's said to follow one's teacher in doing any practice and in delivering any practice. My teacher, Azam Rinpoche, we follow how he does the 9 breaths, but I really loved how the Dalai Lama did his 9 breaths. So I want to demonstrate that before we begin with that. The way that the Dalai Lama did the 9 breaths was he recognized the inner channel, and he took, as we've done, the thumb and the forefinger, and he kind of went over the body, cleansing the channels. And then, I don't know if I can do this exactly as he did it, but then he put his arm out and then put his arm over here, and then used the breath, and I believe he either crossed over there or crossed over there. In terms of the 9 breaths, if you ever want to, again, open up some channels, which we've been working with as well, you can recognize it in the way the Dalai Lama does it. In the way that Asam Rinpoche does it, it's more simple. It's breathing, beginning with the left and bringing up to the nostrils and breathing out 3 times. And then again on the right-hand side and breathing out 3 times, and we'll do it together. And then breathing in and breathing out 3 times. The channels are very connected to ourselves. The eyes are very connected to the channels as well. So in opening and talking about Holocaust Remembrance Day, as a good remembrance for us and a good motivation in terms of practice and having this very special place to do our practice and to be with Dharma people who are all supportive, we have this incredible opportunity to develop, which sometimes people in the world don't have. They don't have the means, they don't have the way to get here, they don't have the safety, they don't have pure drinking water. So we have that, and we make best use of our time. And actually, I wanted to read you this, and we are going to. This is from Trangu Rinpoche called Essential Practices. And he says, first we must abide in a place that is in accord with meditation. Such a place has several aspects. Rather than remaining alone, we go to a place where others who appreciate the value of calm abiding and insight have gathered. Furthermore, in a place conducive to meditation, there will be a person who has knowledge and the ability to teach the meditation. Moreover, that place will be free from those who would harm the practitioners of meditation. In this day and age, we're very, very lucky. So we'll begin with the 9 breaths, which is the clearing of the channels, brings us more into ourselves. We put our fingers lightly on the ring finger, gently closing the hands. And we do put the fist into the groin, and then we breathe in, and then we hold the left nostril, and I'm teaching this while I'm doing it, and breathe out 3 times, going as deeply as we can. First breath, further down, and allowing all the breath to exit, the impurities on that side. And then we again put our fists together and we bring up the right hand and we breathe in as far down into the belly as we can. And we breathe out. And then for the central channel, we breathe all the way in and then out 3 times through both nostrils. And this creates our centering. And we bring our attention into the belly now, and we can let our hands gently relax either on our knees, in our lap, and we come into a calm place. It's called the Dan Tien, the belly, the abdomen. And as a way of focusing in, we have the eyes lightly downcast, and we recognize the support of the room, of all the beings who have meditated in this room throughout the years, many, many. And we recognize the lineages and all of the support that comes from the lineages from the time of the Buddha. And for those who have personal gurus and masters, we recognize them. And we recognize them with appreciation. And we'll spend a little time centering with the breath at the abdomen. If people are here for the very first time, the kind of attention that we cultivate it's kind of relaxation, it's a feeling attention, it's a refined awareness. And in this practice, thoughts are actually unimportant. They may pull us, we may grasp at them. And this practice is called calm abiding. And sometimes it feels calm, and sometimes it does not. And yet, the continuity of returning to the hara, the dantian, the focus at the, is a way of centering, and always to recenter and not to worry when we're not centered. For those familiar with practice, including the spaciousness within the breath, at the abdomen, and feeling comfortable with the spaciousness. For those who may be just beginning, it's enough to come into the centeredness of the abdomen. And the key with the attention is neither trying too hard nor being too lax. It's a refinement. Just take a moment and adjust the body. We do this in shorter sessions, so the meditation is digestible. We can do longer sittings. However, now we're doing shorter, digestible sittings. So when we come into a room, a blessed room, whether it's our home, our meditation area, this room, we again re-bless the room with Om Ah Hung. Om Ah Hung. Those of you who've done a lot of Tibetan practice, Om Ah Hung is said a lot. Sometimes it's said and we even forget why we're saying it. So I want to introduce Om Ah Hung in a little bit more depth, and also in a way where we can recognize Om Ah Hung in our bodies. Once a teacher came to my home and gave a group teaching on Om Ah Hung. His name was Kilung Rinpoche. He had a lot to say about it, but what was most important was the sound, Om Ah Hung. So the Om Ah Hung is blended with an understanding. Om is white, it's a sound, it's at our third eye, and it is the union of appearance and emptiness, and it's also the understanding of our form. We mention the words prejudice, and a lot of times prejudice begins with the seeing of form. We rarely have that broken down in our minds because of the conditioned mind that goes very quickly. But when we stop a movie and look screen by screen, we see the conditioned mind. We see, oh, that was form. Oh, that was my conditioned mind. Oh, and there's my reaction. So we work in a deeper way. We can reason about these things. That's very easy. To uproot and to really work in a subtle way on our subtle body is something else. That is the reason that we work with Om Ah Hung. It's not a denial. It's not like, oh, I'm not having the conditioned mind. I'm not denying having a reaction. But I'm working more subtly. So we work with Om, and Om is about the non-grasping at what we call reality. We put together our world with many clips of vision, many moments of sound, many moments of good feeling or bad feeling. And we make our world, we make our speech, we make our decision. And I remember the first time when Rinpoche visited the United States from Tibet. He'd never been out of Tibet. I was in San Francisco with a colleague who's actually going to be coming and teaching here, Ann Klein. And we took him, I don't know if you've been on the Golden Gate Bridge where you can turn off and look back and see all of San Francisco. It's a beautiful view. Some of you, maybe all of you, have seen that. So we got out of the car and we were really happy to show him this gorgeous view. So we get out, and he looks at us, and he goes, all is appearance. And we're like, uh-oh, you know. And he didn't go overboard with, you know, what a beautiful city and what a beautiful sight, but he turned to us in a teaching and said, all is appearance. When we begin to work with our deeper, subtle minds, subtle awareness, we too can start to break through and work with that. And it's not in a denial of our world, that's very important, but rather it's an integration. It's an integration of our world, where it's a non-grasping. He certainly saw the beautiful sight, no doubt. But his commitment was to teach us, so he turned with the message. And then we know at the throat chakra, and we'll do this, we'll do the Omahung. At the throat chakra. So the throat chakra is red. It holds the red And our speech is very important. We're talking about a Sanskrit syllable, and we could think, well, how's that going to help? Right? You know, is that some other way of just not engaging? Except we've put our world together so solidly that we have to find some deeper way to come into more of our own origin, more of who we really are, rather than who we appear to be. So the is the union of emptiness and sound, and it also purifies speech. So it's nice to think that we can work with these seed Sanskrit syllables as ways of purifying. They're also centering. These are also centering. And then the blue hung at the heart signifies emptiness. And emptiness is not nothingness, but emptiness recognizes that all of this, and this is why the working with space is so important, is that all of this is the putting together, as we said, the makeup of the mind-body process, form and emptiness. Form and emptiness. So even with the sound, we're working with sound, recognizing that that too isn't something solid. We're allowing for the sound and the space, the emptiness and the magnificent are all merging together. So we're working on, as always, different levels. So the hung purifies mental obscurations. In most Asian countries, the heart is considered the seat of the mind. So the hung at the heart is a way to purify the mind. Mind is used in a very big way. Mind is also heart. Mind is also our awareness. So we purify our obscurations. And somebody the other week was asking, well, how can we be acknowledging our true nature and having all these obscurations? So in the practice, we actually are working with both, is that we're actually connecting with the root, our root ground of awareness. But as we connect with our root ground of awareness, and we'll do this 2 more times, and then we'll drop into some quiet meditation. And so again, the white, and the red, and the blue hung. And now in feeling the alignment from the crown chakra down through the center of the body, and feeling our alignment with the inner central channel. The central channel we can imagine or feel is like a porous, thin straw within us. And we align our attention, and then we drop our attention down into the belly, into the abdomen, into the dantian or the hara. And this is where we strengthen ourselves. And this is also where we practice receptivity, only receiving the breath. And if we feel that there are thoughts, emotions, we actually allow for relaxation and the recognition of the non-grasping and the awareness that the thought is only a thought, the feeling is only a feeling, and it is not I. This is from the Treasury of Precious Qualities by Jigme Lingpa. The meaning of the Dharma, like the ocean, deep and hard to fathom. Fear is a sphere exclusively of mind that rests in meditative evenness. It is the domain of primal wisdom that cognizes both the nature and the multiplicity of things. So our practice has two components, as we said: understanding the nature of things, also understanding the multiplicity of things. Emptiness is a key component of Buddhist meditation practice. It could be very well misunderstood. We're very used to grasping itself. This is me, this is I. When we start to break things down, well, where is me and where is I? If it's the vision that we know moment to moment is changing, if it's the sound that we know moment to moment is changing, if it's the body, if we put it under a big microscope, we know it's changing. So one way is by deduction. Where am I? That deduction leads to what is called emptiness. And what emptiness means, it means emptiness of a solid self. So when we look at some of the problems in the world, and again, like we were saying today, is the January 27th, the liberation of Auschwitz. And so we look at prejudice. It's very much a grasping of self and other. It's a great solidification. It takes a lot to break that down, right? It takes a whole lot to break that down. But this word emptiness is very, very important because it's really the essence of everything. Another way to start to relate to emptiness is to understand that within the whole mind-body system, even within this room, there is space. We forget about space. I mean, if we really open our eyes, most of the room is space. And within our body, there's space, there's water. So we start to, again, investigate. And as we keep investigating, we start to understand no self. So some of this work that, say, we just did with the Om Ahung, it's another way to start to come away from always solidifying everything. And we even solidify our thoughts. Well, I think this person is that way, and when I see them again, I'm going to think they're that way. It's very hard for us to refresh. It's very hard for us to refresh our minds. It's very hard for us to refresh our perception. When we start to come into contact with emptiness, the ego kicks in. Oh no, the ego is going to be found out. But that's exactly the time to start to settle in, start to trust that sense of no self, and to understand that the problem with suffering, actually, which we were talking about, is the grasping, self-grasping. I was in a conversation the other night, and I was talking about this word self-grasping. And they said, well, what's that? It was another Buddhist person. And so he said, well, what's that? And I said, it isn't. But we do it, right? We do it. We grasp onto just about anything. Emptiness is an experience. And it's important when we start to understand emptiness that we understand it from the point of view of what's called the Heart Sutra and the Prajnaparamita, that we understand there is form. And when we work with our visualizations, we work with them as rainbows. so that we don't grasp onto those either. Or even when we work with the Om Ah Hung, it's not like Om Ah Hung, rather that it's more of a rainbow. I'm relaxed into it. I'm relaxed into the Om and the white. I'm relaxed into the red and the Ah, and I'm relaxed into the Hung and the blue. So how we do our meditation practice is as important as our meditation practice. I don't know if that answered your emptiness question. So if mind neither grasps at sights or sounds, it will naturally rest within the union of awareness and emptiness. Should I read that again? Yeah. If mind neither grasps at sights or sounds, it will naturally rest within the union of awareness and emptiness. And then it will no longer grasp at mental arisings. And very good point, because the reason that we do the practice, and sometimes it seems like we do the practice over and over again, because the whole mind-body system has to get it. Intellectually, we got it. Intellectually, we have it, okay, but we need to practice. And also, thank you for your practice. It's very important, very important. Resting within appearance and emptiness helps with whichever practices that we're doing, whether it's deity practice, mantra practice, or silent sitting practice. And for those who are just beginning, again, it's going to be enough to create focus, and that is a lot. There are many things that pull our attention. We know all the things that can pull our attention, so here is our opportunity to ground into ourselves and then be able to bring that forward, whether it's into other deeper practices, whether it's into our lives, really stabilize, because what we're doing here is stabilizing our attention, we're stabilizing our practice, and we're getting a lot of good support for doing that. So the more stable our practice is, the more that we can go moment to moment with our practice. That's what we take with us. And then in terms of relating it to enlightened speech, because I want to come back to that a little bit, is that we need that gap, that pause, that moment where we're not carried out into our conditioned mind, but we have an opportunity to actually rest, to actually recognize spaciousness, to actually recognize our own ground of awareness, and that we're coming from our ground of awareness rather than being pushed and pulled. So again, we want to create that grounding. And when we talk about grounding of the nature of mind, it's there. We come into the awareness that that is what we're born with. We nurture that seed until it ripens into full Buddhahood. We're developing a very strong grounding into ourselves so that we are connected to our best and deepest inner nature and not always kind of tossed around by somebody else's opinion and somebody doesn't agree with that. No, we're in our own Buddha nature. So we practice. So it becomes us. So once again, we practice with eyes open unless you're very used to eyes closed. And the reason we practice with eyes open is that there's no inside, no outside. It also helps with the understanding of emptiness, where we're not closed eyes, focusing on an object, and there is a time and place for that. But in this practice, our eyes are open, the hands are either on the lap or on the knees. The spine is straight but not rigid. And the reason that we focus on the abdomen is that this is where our true center is. It's also where we can gather energy, and it's a place we sustain ourselves. And once we are sustained, we can very much help sustain others. And while we have the attention on the dantian or the hara. We might notice that there is vision, but we allow that to be restful. We might know that there is sound. We neither reach out towards it nor push it away. We know the body is sitting, and we're aware of posture. And so we practice with that non-grasping, and that non-grasping will go to all of our practices. And we're also including spaciousness and getting used to spaciousness. And staying in the meditative space, we're going to recenter and do the Om, Ah, Hung, and then fall back into our meditation. So we do the Om, Ah, and then again, the realignment with the central channel, the open focus, feeling of the breath at the abdomen, the lower abdomen. Other times it's good to do the walking as a way to kind of refresh. The walking meditation is important because it embodies what we're working with. And so before we go into our final segment, are there any questions about either walking meditation or the sitting meditation we did, or the use of spaciousness in your practice? Yes.
I had an interesting experience where I was like so focused on the emptiness and it helped me kind of calm and like have less thoughts. And then I just wasn't thinking anything, and I felt like I wasn't gaining anything. It's not like I needed this struggle to feel like I was making gains so much as like I would just look at some things like, oh, you know, that's a table or that's a heater or whatever, and it was like normally I feel like when I'm in my most like productive meditation, I feel like in this kind of blissed out Zen state, but it was like very objective, and I'm curious if it's like working just as well or what that is.
Okay, and that's a really good question too, because our practice changes, and it can even change from session to session. But it does happen when we're developing in our meditation practice that we do develop. I believe I used the word last week. Jigme Lingpa uses it, called even-mindedness. Even-mindedness is a really good word. I used to use the word equanimity, but I like even-mindedness, because even-mindedness is really an approach. It's whatever we see, whatever we hear, the mind naturally calms. Because a lot of times the conditioned mind jumps, right? I like it, I don't like it. But when we're able to have, at first it might seem like it's almost too objective, right? And I think that might be what you're referring to, like, ew, who wants to do that? It might not seem so interesting. However, it's really a step on the way, because the first thing is that the senses need to calm. They really need to calm. And then that experience of where awareness is more of the primary object than the liking and disliking of the object, or the wanting or the not wanting of the object, where more of just the awareness, then the awareness becomes the meditation. It shifts. It shifts to awareness. A lot of times, I don't know if you've had the experience, but meet someone who's done a lot of meditation and they don't just jump onto everything. It's like, oh, okay. Because there's a comfort with spaciousness. There's a comfort with just what is. So then pleasure is based on that feeling rather than the liking of an object or the having of an object and so forth, or a person. So I don't know if that starts to address your experience. It's a shift, is what it is. It's a shift. And it's a different kind of happiness. It's a different kind of a happiness. So it's an even-mindedness. And there is definitely it can feel radical to have the inner wisdom and the inner connectedness, and even the connectedness to our true nature, be predominant. That becomes predominant. So it's a shift. It's a shift, yeah. But I think all of these experiences happen. It's not like, oh, now I'm a meditator and I only have one experience. But rather that we become, and that's why I mentioned how we meditate is very important. Because if we're meditating with grasping, then that becomes another grasping. But if we can meditate with transitioning into the acceptance of, say, even-mindedness, that also shifts into a natural joy, which has a base of calm. It's not the same thing as, say, as you're mentioning, the excitement of the light, okay? So there's not always the excitement of the light, but sometimes there is. So then there's the acceptance of that as well. And as we start to accept all of these more, you could say, developed mind states, or who we really are, then our whole approach to life becomes so different. So different. It's like when I first started practicing and, I would read these texts and they go, well, it's all illusion. I go, that's not helpful. But then, as things start to kind of break down and you see, oh my goodness, it really is all illusion, it becomes more satisfying. There's something more nurturing in knowing that. But in the beginning, if somebody's starting to tell us, oh, it's all illusion and, it's just your mind and don't pay attention to it, don't worry about it, that's just not helping. But if we come into really the depths of ourselves and we go, wow, what's true is our own true nature, is our own seeds of Buddhahood, is our own potentiality. And when we meet a situation and we come from that potentiality, then we impress ourselves. And we know we can do that more. Okay? Yeah. And again, I remember years ago meditating with a former teacher, Chaduk Rinpoche, and he talked a lot about deity practice, which at first was very foreign to me. I started with, quiet meditation, mindfulness, vipassana, and so deity practice was just almost like a foreign language, visualizing something and, what did that do? But he gave a really good explanation, and as you know, I entered into these practices as I began to understand them. But he talked about how we're so identified with ourselves and our solidity and what we think and what we do and who we are and who the other person is and how we're going to relate to them, that actually shifting to a deity helps our whole mind-body relax. Just relax. other questions? We start to kind of break through ordinary seeing, right, into the fact that, say, in walking, that, oh, wow, I'm in the present. And also, what you notice, the present is changing. The grass felt slightly different, or a shift felt slightly different. And so what this is doing is it's really the experiential training of the mind-body system. It's the direct experience. That's called a direct experience. Okay? And so in the meditation practice, it's really to develop that capacity for direct experience. And I mean, that was one of the things that kind of propelled me around the world, was that, you know, I had a lot of book learning and I had a lot of intellectual understanding, but I felt that there was something very poignant about learning by direct experience. Yeah. So I don't know if that's what you were trying to say. Sure. Well, the moment is one of present awareness. Absolutely. And it sounds like an opening for more of that too. Yeah. Great. Any other questions or comments before we continue? I think probably one thing that's helped me, and maybe I've shared this before, my first introduction to Buddhist meditation was hour-long meditations, back to back. So I actually had many mind moments of when was that bell ringing. One thing that's actually very helpful is to go identify, say, if the feeling, rather than, oh, when will the bell ring? Well, either there's a thought, or there may be a feeling of discomfort, or there could even be something like boredom, or, when's the next activity? To try to identify what that is. Was that a thought? Was that a feeling? Was that an emotion? So to try to feel that and then to go a little more deeply into that. The other is, I think, something that was important to me is just like any exercise or any music development or art development, is that there is just a way of extension. So that, maybe we run another half mile, or we practice the piano for another 15 minutes, or whatever we do to extend, and then that our strength actually builds in that extension. We're always uncomfortable, and it might even be just discomfort. That's simple. That we're used to, when we're uncomfortable, move. Or we're uncomfortable, well, let's go do something else. Okay, dropped in on meditation, check, off we go. But when we're really taking it as a practice, then we make that extension, just like we would do with any other discipline. That is the most important part of practice. And so it's a good point, because sometimes we have to distract ourselves to be able to continue. And then other times it's diving in. And it's the same thing with pain. Different people work with pain, because now we're kind of getting to the pain question. Different people get to the pain and discomfort, and some people really have to almost imagine themselves larger to be able to open to the pain. And then other people have to go within the pain to find that space that is beyond pain. So everyone works with pain differently at different times. Okay. my own experience in the meditation practice was going into it. A discussion with somebody who wrote a book about pain, and he said not everyone can do that, and so that it's important to give people, different options of working. That all of us are receiving many blessings. We're receiving blessings from the place. We're receiving blessings from our own teachers, those people who have a meditation deity. So we're going to complete, and so I would like for all of us just to imagine light, and that light contains goodness, and that we bring that in through the central channel and into the lower belly as a way of sealing our practice of bringing in blessings. Environment, again, we just kind of relax in an open way, and we imagine that above it's called the crown chakra. Many of you are familiar with that. And we bring in the blessings channel. And we can allow the light to swirl within us. And if there's any impurities, anything last lingering, we can allow that to leave through our feet, and making the wish that through our continued practice, through our continued opening into our true nature, to grow from the seed of our own enlightenment into allowing our wisdom, and we dedicate our practice, and may our own development be a blessing to all whom we meet, to all whom we know.